All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr. Butler. So as Dr. Butler stated, my name is Jeanetta Cardine. I am the Deputy Director in the Office of Contract Compliance. I oversee the Compliance Division. My team of compliance officers, as Dr. Butler stated, we oversee all of the government contracts that come in that have MWBE goals attached to them. We also set goals on contracts. We review good faith efforts. We monitor contracts as well that have goals attached to them. So today's training is understanding the utilization plan. And as Dr. Butler stated, we know that the utilization plan is very critical to any contract that has MWBE goals attached to it. So it's critical for not only the subcontractor, but it is absolutely critical as well for the prime contractor. So we're going to kind of go into discussing what the utilization plan is and how to thoroughly complete it. The objective of this training is to provide a deep understanding, a deep comprehensive understanding of the utilization plan and its significance in the contract compliance process. So what is a utilization plan? So a utilization plan is a strategic document required to be used on any Cook County government contracts where MWBE goals have been established. The U plan outlines how a prime contractor intends to engage and utilize minority-owned, women-owned, and disadvantaged business entities throughout the duration of a project. So the U plan demonstrates a prime contractor's commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion in the procurement of goods and services, ensuring that these businesses have equitable opportunities to participate. Hello, somebody speaking? Okay, thank you. All right, so with our utilization plans, you will see on any of our Cook County government contracts, as well as the hospital contracts, you'll see this form that you see here. There are a couple of forms that need to be filled out when you are participating on Cook County government contracts. So this first form here is Form 1. So Form 1 is the first form that you will fill out where you will identify. You will check either of these boxes here. So you'll see Roman numeral number 1, bidder or proposer, MWBE status. We know that also, you may not know, or you may know that some of our MWBEs, while we're speaking sort of to the subcontracting community, we have some MWBEs that also bid as primes, and they have subcontractors that participate on contracts with them as well. So when you're filling out this first form, you need to identify on this first form whether or not you, as the prime contractor, are identifying yourself as a certified MBE or WBE. So if you are also going to satisfy participation on that contract, whether it's 25% or 10% or 35% overall, you need to check box number 1. If you are participating on this contract and you are certified as an MWBE, and then this is also a joint venture.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Teresa, can you please mute yourself? Thank you. if you are identifying yourself as an MWBE and you're participating as a joint venture, also you would check box number 2. Now, if you are not certified as an MBE and there is no joint venture on this particular contract, then you would check box number 3. You then need to identify whether or not, in Roman numeral number 2, if this is going to be direct participation or indirect participation. And please remember to read the note here. And this is critical because if you have identified that there are no direct participants with MWBE certification that are going to participate on this contract, then if you identify indirect participation, then you have to go into the process of documenting good faith efforts, and we'll get into that in a moment. But for the purposes of this particular form at this juncture, we're going to speak to the direct participation component for a moment. So then once you have identified who that you're going to do direct participation, you would then go into identifying who the MWBEs that are going to participate on this contract. So if you see here,
I figured it might as well.
Okay, Dr. Butler.
Ms. Franco, can you please mute yourself? And let me just as a reminder, you all, please make sure that you're muting yourself. Please make sure that you are muting yourself. Thank you. Sorry about that, Jeanetta.
No worries. All right, as I stated, if you are identifying the subcontractors, you would then put the firm's name, all of their identifying information, their address, email, contact person, and phone number. The next thing you would then enter is the dollar amount. So if this contract has a 35% goal attached to it, and you are intending to satisfy the entire 35%, you must include the 35% participation as well as the dollar amount. If you don't know the dollar amount, then that's okay. We'll accept the percentage, but we will not accept the dollar amount without the percent amount participation. Also check whether or not you have additional letters of intent attached, because if as I stated with this form, this is form number 1. If you have multiple vendors that are going to participate on this contract, you do have to identify all of them. And again, we'll get to that next stage. But I want to roll back for real quick and talk about why it is critical that we make sure that we're filling these forms out correctly. One of the things you have to know about the utilization plan is that we have to make sure that we are following the procurement code as it relates to all contractual obligations with contracts here at Cook County government. So we want to make sure that we are filling these forms out correctly. We're not missing anything. We're not omitting anything, and we're not leaving anything blank. Oh, let me roll back and let me also mention the current letter of certification should also be attached to this. So you need to also include with this form the certification of how that subcontractor has been identified, if they're MBE, if they're WBE, or if this is a construction contract, they're DBE. Now, if you are bidding on this contract and you are the prime contractor and you have MBE or WBE status, you also need to share with us your letter of certification that identifies you as the MBE or WBE that is going to be satisfying a portion of the goal that's on this contract. Again, as I stated earlier, this is additional, this is form number 2. So form number 1 just identifies how you're going to satisfy the goal that's on the contract. And then number 2 is also identifying all of the vendors, subcontractors that are on this contract. So you see here up at the top, and let me move this. Can you all see that? Is that Is that blocking, Dr. Butler? I can't tell.
No, we see it.
You can see it, okay. So here on form number 2, you also have to identify the certifying agency. So here at Cook County Government, we only accept 2 certifying bodies. Cook County, ourselves, and the City of Chicago. We have a reciprocity agreement with the City of Chicago, and those are the only 2 certifying bodies, ourselves, Cook County Government, and the City of Chicago, that we will accept on Cook County Government contracts. So if you are bidding on a contract and you know a certifying a vendor is certified with the state of Illinois, we will not accept that certification. You must have a certifying certification letter that states that the vendor is certified with either Cook County Government or the City of Chicago. And you will enter that information here as the certifying agency. You'll also include the certification expiration date. You'll fill in what the subcontractor's ethnicity is. You'll also include the contract number, the business's FEIN number, and so forth, so on. A lot of this is very self-explanatory. One of the problems that we are finding is that when these forms show up in our office, when our compliance officers are reviewing these forms, many of these forms, a lot of this information is blank. Again, it is critical that every section is covered. Every section is filled out in its entirety. If it does not apply to a particular contract, or it does not apply to, if it's a zero-go contract and it does not apply or something of that nature, put in A, but do not leave it blank. You want to also identify if this is direct or indirect participation. And as I stated, when I get to the section on good faith efforts, I'll talk more about the indirect component. You want to identify, will the MWBE firm be subcontracting any of the goods or services to another firm? We want to make sure that there is not a tier 2, tier 3, or a pass through any of those things that are happening. We know that sometimes that happens. We don't necessarily agree with that. It may be a situation where there is a joint venture, or there is some tier 2, tier 3 situations going on. However, we don't necessarily agree with that, but make sure that you are identifying whether or not the firm will be subbing to another firm. This may be a situation where the prime is subbing to another subcontractor, where they could answer yes and then explain the situation, but it is because the prime is also identified as an MWBE where this situation would make sense. Indicate the dollar amount, the percentage, and the terms of payment. Do not leave these areas blank. Again, we see this all the time where forms are coming into us and a lot of this information is blank. If it does not apply, put NA. However, in this instance, it does apply. Make sure both parties sign, legibly, date, put the firm's information, then have it notarized. This form, the letter of intent, form 1 and 2, become a part of the contract once it is awarded, signed, and notarized. One of the things I want to also stress, make sure you read these forms fully. Make sure you read the contract terms fully. Make sure you understand prime contractors and subcontractors. Make sure you understand what it is that you are agreeing to and what it is that you are going to be providing. Make sure that you have a clear understanding of what the commodity codes are that this solicitation is requiring. In this section here, the undersigned is prepared to provide the following commodities services for the above named project. Make sure you understand what it is you're going to be providing. Prime contractors, make sure you are very clear about what it is the subcontractors will be doing. We're going to ask those questions when these forms come back to us. Now, let's talk about waivers, requests for good faith effort, transparency report. Whenever there is a goal on a contract, and the goal is for 25%, 35%, 10%, what have you. Whenever we set goals on contracts, we set goals on contracts based on the marketplace of what we see as far as the solicitation is identifying. So if a user department reaches out to us and says, we're going to purchase electricity, or we're looking for electricians. When they say to us they're looking for electricians, we then go to the marketplace and identify, based on those commodity codes, based on what the user department has told us that they are purchasing, we're going to go to the marketplace and look for electricians. We're then going to say, what type of electricians are you looking for or are you wanting to purchase? Once we have identified whatever the user department is saying that they are purchasing, then that is how that goal is established, based on the commodity codes and based on the marketplace. So if the marketplace says to us that there are 50 vendors in this particular commodity code that can provide services to this particular solicitation, then we're going to set a 35% goal, and I'm just throwing some numbers out there, on this particular solicitation. So that then goes out to the street. The bidders then now say, okay, there's a 35% goal on this contract. There are 50 vendors in the marketplace that could potentially participate on this contract. Now, you as the prime come back and say, they said there were 50 vendors in this particular commodity code. However, upon doing further research and drilling down, we have found that there are not 50 vendors who can actually potentially do the work. So if you saw 50 vendors and then you did your research, you reached out to them, you tried to get an agreement, you tried to get them to sign the letter of intent, but before signing the letter of intent, you asked them what was their capacity. You asked them for a capability statement. You asked them for how they would do the particular scopes of services that this solicitation is asking for. You have found that not necessarily they can do the work. So now you have to then come back to us and say, well, you set a 35% goal on this contract, and you said that there were 50 vendors in the marketplace that could potentially do this work. However, upon our research, we found that they don't actually have the capability to do what we need them to do. So you have to then share with us how you went about getting that information from all of those 50 vendors who we have identified could do the work. You have to show us dates and times of how you communicated with them, who you communicated with, and all of that information needs to be in writing and detailed. And now let me say to you, the compliance officers are very rigorous when it comes to good faith efforts, especially if we have gone to see that vendors are there to potentially do the work that we have identified. You have to be very, very clear about your good faith efforts. And now, what does it mean to provide a valid good faith effort? So what does good faith efforts mean? So good faith efforts means that when you are requesting a waiver, you, the bidder or the offerer, you have to demonstrate that you took all necessary and reasonable steps to achieve the goal that has been established on this contract. And if you are clearly documenting that, as I stated, there were 50 vendors out in the marketplace, if you have identified where you have spoken to all 50, you communicated with them, you've asked them for capability statements, you've asked them for their capacity, you've communicated back and forth with them, you've documented, and you were not able to arrive at an agreement, or you were able to identify a subcontractor that could potentially participate on this contract, then you submit all that information to us. Then the compliance officers, again, they're going to mimic your efforts. They're going to go behind you. They're going to go and reach out to all 50 of those vendors that you stated, that you communicated with, and determine if, in fact, you did do a valid good faith effort. Now, one of the things you also want to know, and this is another form that if you are adding subcontractors to your utilization plan, you have to identify all of the subcontractors that are going to participate on this particular contract. And this form, again, this form also becomes a part of the contract once it is filled out. Again, it's similar to the first form, Form 1, Form 2, but this form is required by the CPO's office. So this form doesn't necessarily live with us, but it kind of hangs out in our package. But it again, it becomes a part of the contract. It is the ISF form. It's the identification of subcontractor, supplier / subconsultant form, where you, again, identify who's participating on the contract. You're identifying the description of services or supplies, and you're also identifying their the total price that you're going to be paying them. Again, make sure it is signed by everyone. This form does not need to be notarized, but it does need to be signed. This form, again, if there are any changes to it, it must be submitted to us once you have identified the subcontractors or subconsultants that are going to be participating on this contract. Any questions while I am moving along? I don't want to keep talking. If there are some questions that anyone has. Dr. Butler, is there any questions in the chat?
There are a couple of questions in here.
Okay.
I'll ask those questions that are in the chat, and then I do see one hand, so once I'm finished, I'll have that particular attendee ask her question.
Okay.
But for now, as a subcontractor, should the prime be giving us a copy of this form? My prime doesn't always tell me how much he will use me for, and this particular person is an MBE.
Very good question. Absolutely. Yes. And that's, I am very glad that you asked this question. This is one of the things that we say to our subs all the time. Ask questions. Ask for a copy of the contract where you are participating. Ask for a copy of the signed letter of intent. Don't just, someone is speaking.
I got them.
Don't always ask for, don't always sign letters of intent and not be aware of when that contract has been awarded. So I know that many times subcontractors, they're often scouted or seeked out or looked for. And a lot of times subcontractors are asked to be on contracts. And it's sad to say, but sometimes subs are added to contracts and they are never told if that contract is awarded. Don't always sign a letter of intent and sign away your MWBE status just to say that you're on a contract and you're not even aware that that contract has been awarded. Always ask questions. Always read what the agreement is. Always make sure that you have a fee schedule. Make sure that you're sharing with the prime contractor what your fees are. Don't just sign a letter of intent and you're not clear about what you're signing. Treat your MWBE certification status like a bank account, like a social security number. That MWBE status means something. So whenever they're courting you and they're reaching out to you, not only make sure that you are in a position to do what they're asking you to do, but also be in a position to value your certification. If they are asking you and they're courting you and they're wanting you to participate on this contract, value your role as a subcontractor. Value your certification status. Ask for a copy of once the contract is awarded. Find out when the bid is due. Find out when if the bids are due within 2 weeks, find out when the bids are going to be open, when the awards are going to happen. Put yourself on a schedule and follow up. Don't just sign things and not be clear about what you're agreeing to. I am often, and not so much as I'm telling the compliance officers to often say to you, the subcontractors, the MWBE community, be aware of what you are involved in. Make sure that you are reading the requirements that are the solicitation is asking of you as the subcontractor. Follow up with the prime and ask them, what is it that I'm going to be doing? What portion of the solicitation are you requiring of me? Any other questions?
Yes. Is there a place to let prime contractors know you are available to subcontract?
So there is not necessarily a place, but I would encourage you to register in Bonfire. The CPO has a website where they often, if you're registered in Bonfire, you'll get a notification of solicitations that are coming out on the street. Know what areas that you fit in. Go back and look at old, the Cook County has the buying plan, and I believe that's also public. Go back and look at old, the history of previous contracts that went out on the street. For instance, if you're in landscaping, go look at all of the old landscaping contracts. One of the things you have to know about the government is we buy everything. And most of the time, the government continues to buy the same things that they've always purchased. So put yourself in a position to look at what's happening often, and then go back and look to see what may be coming up or coming down the pipe in the near future, and position yourself to, as I stated, be ready when a contract is coming out on the street. Be ready when a prime reaches out to you. Be ready when they say, okay, we're going to need you to do X, Y, and Z. Make sure that you have a capability statement. Put together a small pitch deck. I think that's what they call it. A little small one pager, identifying who you are, what your commodity codes are, what you're capable of doing. If you've been on contracts in the past, get some testimonials from previous prime contractors sharing what that relationship was like, and just, put yourself in a position to always be selling yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. Let's see. May a prime buy an up to percentage? For example, they plan to use the MWBE sub for up to 8%.
Say that again.
May a prime buy an up to percentage? For example, they plan to use the MWBE. I'm assuming the answer to this question is no. For example, they plan to use the MWBE sub for up to 8%.
No, if the goal is 8%, you go 8%. Not an up to, absolutely not. The only way that would work is if the prime is also an MWBE. And so if the prime says that they're going to satisfy 10% of the contract and they're going to sub out the other portion, whatever that goal is, you got to meet it. You got to meet it. There's no up to. The only way, again, is if the prime is also MWBE, has MWBE status or certification. And the reason I say that is because sometimes a sub, they may either lose their certification or they may not have the commodity codes to satisfy whatever that other portion of the solicitation that the solicitation is calling for. So then that means the prime has to then come in and clean up the rest. But no, if the goal is 10% and you've signed a letter of intent and you say you intend to give that 10% to that sub, the sub has to do the 10%. And it also just triggered me to mention something else. Make sure that you keep up with your certifications. Make sure those certifications stay valid. One of the things that we are also finding with our subs is that they're letting their certifications lapse. And if you are on a contract and the contract is for 3+ years, you got to make sure that that certification stays valid for those years, because if you lose your certification, that's a detriment to that entire contract. And now that prime has to scramble and find someone else to satisfy the portion of that part of the contract that you've agreed to participate in. And so the primes have a duty, but the subcontractors have a duty as well to make sure that you keep your certification and you keep your business and you keep all of your things intact, as well as the prime keeping all of their things intact.
Okay, and so we have some other questions, but we can do those towards the end. There was one that someone had their hand raised, and she had her hand raised early on. So Teresa, can you come off mute and ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you so much. I was just calling in to see, will we get a copy of this recording? Because you gave a lot of good information, and I didn't come in at the very, very beginning, but I'd like to have to know if that's possible for us to get a copy of the recording or the, what do you call it, the PD something, PDF, Q something, I don't know.
Yes, ma'am.
Presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Everybody will receive an email with a link to the YouTube video.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is really great.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jay, you got it.
Questions? Any other? Okay, you know
there
what?
There are several questions, but we'll just wait until the end because I don't want you to run out of time.
Okay, great. I'm gonna go further into the slide. So as I am wrapping up, again, here are some key takeaways that I kind of share with, and we'll give you all a little more time to ask questions. I knew that this was going to be robust in asking questions. I want you guys to be clear that whenever you are being courted by primes, whenever you are courting subcontractors, make sure that you are reading the U plan in its entirety. Make sure to fill out all sections completely, leaving nothing blank. If it does not apply, put in A. Remember to sign and notarize the letter of intent. Remember to identify the scopes of services that the subs will satisfy, as well as the percentage, the dollar amount, and the terms of payment for participation. And I cannot stress that enough. I'm going to roll back and talk about indirect participation. Indirect participation, again, is only if you have not identified a MWBE that is certified that can do direct participation. If you have said that the goal on the contract, we said to them, there are 50 vendors, you've done your research, none of those 50 can do the work, but we are going to go out with this MWBE that's with indirect participation or a non-MWBE, and you've done your good faith efforts. Again, those good faith efforts have to literally be flawless. If you're going to come and say, we want a waiver, however, we're going to subcontract with a non-MWBE, that's indirect participation. Also ensure that if direct participation is being used. Make sure the vendor is certified in the appropriate NICS codes and is performing a commercially useful function of the solicitation. And what do I mean by that? Commercially useful function means that they are doing something that the solicitation requires or is calling for. The scopes of services are calling for something specific to what the subcontractor is certified in. Also, subcontractors, make sure you keep your codes up to date. If you need to expand your codes, reach out to, if you're certified with the City of Chicago, reach out to the City of Chicago. If you're certified here at Cook County, reach out to the certification team here at Cook County. Make sure your commodity codes are up to date and they are in the areas of your expertise. Do not sign a letter of intent for a construction contract and you are a florist. Do not. Because when those U plans come in, the compliance officers are going to look and see that this is a construction contract and Joe's florist is certified in flower making. That U plan is going to be non-responsive. You are not satisfying a commercially useful function of the solicitation if you do that. Also remember that once the contract is awarded, the U plan becomes a part of the contract. Why do I say that? Because primes often think that when they sign letters of intent, that those don't matter. They do. You are violating the procurement code and you are in breach of contract if you are not doing what you have agreed to do on this letter of intent with this utilization plan as it relates to this subcontractor. Do not think that just because you signed it that we are not going to challenge it. We are going to challenge it. Letters of intent, the U plan, once signed, dated, notarized, and awarded, it becomes a part of the contract. All right, any other questions?
All right, let's see. Most of them I was able to drop links in the chat.
Okay.
Let me go. Terms of payment. Is there something already set? What is the standard?
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna come off, I'm gonna put my screen back on. Okay. Ask that question again.
Is there a standard for terms of payment, like prompt pay and stuff like that?
So prompt pay is specific to the prime contractor where it's kind of twofold. So we have the Prompt Payment Act that Cook County government adheres to for the state of Illinois. But a prime contractor, according to our rules here at Cook County government, a lot of it has to do with what the agreement is, but they should be paying you within 30 days of the work that you've done. And it also depends on when you sent the invoice to the prime contractor. So if you are on a Cook County government contract and you are in the B2G system and you go into the system and you have to verify the payment that you have received from the prime contractor, the system will ask you if you've been paid within 30 days. And if you have not been paid within 30 days, then you do need to kind of detail or explain why you weren't paid within 30 days. Sometimes it could be because the prime has not been paid, but that's neither here nor there, because primes, even though there may be a lax in payment from them getting from Cook County government, that has nothing to do with your agreement with them. Your agreement with them is different than their agreement with the county government. Always remember that, because primes will often say, well, I haven't been paid, so I can't pay you. That has nothing to do with anything. Just like the prime is requiring you to have a standard level of capacity to participate on this contract, the prime themselves should also have a standard way of having capacity to participate in doing business with the government. And so they should be able to, even if they don't get paid, they should be able to weather the storm to still pay their subcontractors. However, sometimes that is not always the case. And if you feel like there is a situation where you need to have us to come in as mediators, we have a reviews module within the contracting system on the B2G system where you can say to us, I'm on this contract, I'm a subcontractor, the prime has not paid me, the prime has not used me, I signed a letter of intent, we had an agreement to do X, Y, and Z, and they've not done that. If you fill out that complaint within the reviews module, and it's a twofold, it's for the primes as well as the subs. We'll then come in, we'll investigate, we'll look at it, and we'll say, hey, we'll come in and have a meeting and find out what the problem is and see if we can resolve it amicably. Because again, we want to continue to have a good working relationship, but at the same time, we also don't want subcontractors working and not getting paid.
All right, thank you, Jay. Is the letter of intent the same as a 103A form?
103A, I'm not familiar with that. Is that something that is similar in construction? 103A, I'm not familiar with that. 103A.
I'm
Yeah,
not
that's,
familiar with that either. Morgan, do you want to come off of mute and?
yeah, can you give me a little more detail about that? And I've been in contracting a long time. I'm not familiar with that one.
In the meantime, what happens with payment process lien waivers? Are you familiar with that, Jay?
Payment process lien waivers.
Yeah, I think for these questions, it might make sense for the individual to come off of mute because sometimes,
Yeah, they could give me a little more detail.
Yeah, it's a little vague.
That is.
So is Morgan available to come off of mute and elaborate on her question? What about Elizabeth?
Hi.
Hi.
Typically, as a sub, we'll be asked to give lien waivers for the partial payment prior to them processing.
And are they asking for you to waive a portion of your fee?
Yeah, so they'll say like, let's just say for $10, all right, we've done 50% of the work. And then they want to bill us as part of their payment, if you will. They want to, they'll have to submit $5, on our invoice. And then we have to submit a lien waiver for the $5. And then they submit that.
Is that something that you agreed to in the beginning of the contract when you were signing the letter of intent? Or is this something that happens later?
That's sort of been typical of a process with CHA and in the city. And so
okay,
they keep that as a record that they've paid us. So then if we come back and say, hey, you didn't pay us our $5, they say they've been paid. I mean, is Cook County doing?
No, and I'm not from, that's what I'm saying, that when you said CHA in the city, that's one of their processes. And yeah,
Okay.
that's interesting, but I would, and are you all doing that at the front of the signing of the letter of intent? When are you?
No, once the contract's been awarded and then we've all been working and then like,
it kind of shows up later?
Yeah. That comes up later.
Okay. always get all of the information on the front.
Yeah.
And this is why I encourage subs, ask as many questions, treat your certification like a bank account. Okay. Treat your certification like a social security number. Hold it close to your heart. Don't just be, so excited to be on a contract that you're not aware of everything that you're going to be doing later on down the line. So don't get hoodwinked.
Okay.
At the tail end. So ask as many questions, and now you've had that experience, kind of ask those questions later on down the line, and it'll trigger primes to realize, oh, they're savvy, they understand. So they may not always necessarily ask you to do those kinds of things that now that you've showed them that you're aware.
Okay. Oh, very good. Very good presentation. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So let me see. Morgan said that she tried to unmute herself, but it didn't connect. But she did say that a 103A is a letter of intent form with the school district. So Morgan,
That's what it is, school district,
yeah, it's
okay.
with the school district. So one thing that we all have to just remember is we all support one another. For instance, like CPS, and when you say school district, I'm gonna assume that you're talking about CPS. CPS will take the county certification, but everybody has their own processes.
Yeah.
And they have their own forms that they use. And so that's why we don't know kind of what that is, because it's something that's specific to the school system and not necessarily the county. So can't really answer if they're similar because we're not familiar with that particular form.
But if it's asking for, I'll say this though, Dr. Butler, if it's asking for to identify the subcontractor, to identify the dollar amount, to identify the percentage of what that sub is going to satisfy, and if it's also identifying the scopes of services and all of those things, and if it's signed and notarized, most letters of intent are similar. They may be identified differently in terms of how they're named, but if it's asking for all of those different identifiers, it's probably similar. And if you have to sign it and notarize it, and once that contract is awarded, it becomes a part of the contract. That is something that is universal with federal, state, city, county. Letters of intent, even though primes will challenge the wording, they'll challenge the intent. Well, we intend to do this. But that's the key word, you intend. So when you say you intend to do something, you intend to do it. Now, whether you actually do it, that's a different thing. But when you signed it, that was your intent. So I think even though it might be named something different, it's probably similar.
Thank you, Jay. Do vendors need to register with Bonfire in order to do business with Cook County? Is Bonfire a third-party platform?
Yes. And it's always good to register with Bonfire because it keeps you in the know. Even though you may not have a particular interest in some of the contracts that are rolling out, you may know of another business that could potentially bid on a contract. But registering in Bonfire keeps you up to date. You see all of the different solicitations that are coming out, and you never know, you might run into one that fits your commodity codes.
Awesome. And let's see, one other question. Morgan followed up with, it does ask to identify the dollar amount, percentage, scope, and contract number. Thank you for clarifying. Can a prime indicate to be determined instead of writing a specific contract number if they know a scope but not which contract it will be used for?
Now that I can't speak to. I can only speak to it here at Cook County because I oversee Cook County. I won't accept that. With the city or with CPS, that's something that you would have to ask them. But my team, I don't accept that. The prime has to identify what the scopes of services are. And like I said, they must be a commercially useful function of that solicitation. If that solicitation is asking for specific scopes of services, the prime has to carve that out. And they have to tell us how this sub is going to satisfy it, and at what percentage, and at what dollar amount, and what those terms of payment are going to be. So for CPS, that's something you'll have to ask them. But my team, we don't accept it. They have to tell us, or that's you plan will be deemed non-responsive.
All right. I think, let's see. Teresa, question?
Yes, thank you. Miss Cardine, am I pronouncing that right?
Yes.
You are fabulous. Can you go over there to the city of Chicago and teach them what you're doing over here? Because I am so impressed with you, my darling.
Thank you.
I am an advocate for minority and women and disadvantaged contractors. I worked for the
Yes.
city for over 30 years in city government under 3 mayor administrations, start with Harold. And you are fabulous. I don't
Thank you.
know. I'm so serious. You all don't understand. I am fighting with these people all the time in the city because, and you, it's just so natural for you. Can you please go over to the city and either replace Eileen the last class or do something to have the mayor give you some kind of contract to teach these people over in the city. They're making it so difficult, and everything you are saying is just makes so much sense. I love you.
Well, thank you. I
And
appreciate
could you
it.
put your
Look,
contact information in the, or will we get it when you
yes,
send it? Okay.
yes, Dr. Butler can share it with you all.
And
I
Dr. Butler,
appreciate that.
you
Thank
too. I'm
you.
sorry. I don't mean to slight you either, honey. You are
That's all right.
fabulous.
That's all
You
right.
guys
That's all
are
right.
fabulous. Just
Thank you, T.
fabulous.
Thank you, Miss Teresa. Thank you so much.
Just call
All
me
right,
TJ.
you all. Anna said TJ is spot on. Y'all, Jeanetta, let me tell you, Jeanetta knows her business now over here with this compliance. She used to work at the state, and she did this for years over at the state of Illinois. And she came over here a couple years ago. Actually, she and I started on the same exact day, and she's a force to be reckoned with when it comes to this compliance stuff. So definitely, if you have any questions for compliance, anything that you need to know as a subcontractor, she's the person that you want to connect with, or her team. They're a great group of people as well. This is the email address that you can send any questions that you have as it relates to contract compliance. Definitely. You know what? And I just remember I didn't introduce myself. I started this whole thing and then y'all don't know who I am.
You didn't.
My goodness, I'm so sorry. So my name is Dr. McHugh Butler Finn. I am the Deputy Director in the Office of Contract Compliance for Strategic Initiatives. And what my division is responsible for is what you see here today. So we educate and prepare the vendors to be ready to perform on contracts. We make sure that you have everything that you need. We make sure that you have an advocate in the form of what you need to be ready, to be capable, to be able. That's what we're here for. So that's who I am. I apologize. So I don't think that there are any other questions. I just think there's been a lot of kudos given in the chat. Thank you all so much. Ash, thank you so much for being here. And Jay, do you have anything else to say before we end?
No, I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what you kind of said. Yes, Dr. Butler, she failed to introduce herself. But one of the things that her and I kind of talk about often is how to make things a lot simpler for the MWBE community. And when she kind of asked me, she's like, Jay, what do you think would be some really good educational tools for our MWBEs and U plans? I'm looking at how you guys are filling them out. I'm looking at how, and I'll give you guys a quick backstory. When I was over at the state, and this is why I say to you all, please hold your certifications closely. Do not just use your certification all willy-nilly. I had a subcontractor sign off on a letter of intent. He was on a contract and didn't know it. And he had been on the contract for 2 years and didn't know it. They had not used him. They had not paid him. He was on this contract for 2 years and he called me. I was monitoring the contract and then it was time for them to give some updates and they couldn't give the updates because they had not used him. And so now they're scrambling and now it's all of these investigations and he had no clue. He had signed so many letters of intent, he wasn't even aware of the one that was actually awarded. And this is why I say to you all, ask questions. And so when Dr. Butler wanted to do something that would be beneficial to the MWBE community, I told her, you plans. You guys have to know, you have to ask questions, and you have to make sure that you are clear about what you are agreeing to. Make sure you have your fee schedules in place. And when you sign it and they notarize it, it's gold. So I want to thank Dr. Butler for letting me come and hang out with you all today. And yeah, you got questions about U plans or anything compliance related, my team and I are ready to answer.
Thanks, Jay. So one other thing, you all, please, if you're not registered in Bonfire, please register in Bonfire. I've dropped the link in the chat a couple of times. Please, it doesn't hurt anything to register in Bonfire. That's how, we've already mentioned that you have to be registered in Bonfire to do business with the county. But then that's also the way that once you put your codes and everything in there, that's the way that you get announcements for RFPs or projects that are in the queue or going to be coming down. The buying plan is out there as well. I'll definitely link the buying plan in the follow-up email. And you all will get a copy of this chat also in the follow-up email. So you'll have a link to, we can share this slide deck with you, number one. And then you will have a link to the YouTube channel. I think I dropped that in the chat also, but if you don't see it, I'll make sure that you have a link to this particular training. We also we do a quarterly training with the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer on how to do business with the county. We do that every quarter. And so every time we do it, we record it and it's housed on our YouTube channel. So you can actually go to our YouTube channel. There's like a bunch of different videos on there about different things that you may find interesting or valuable for your business. And just watch them, educate yourself in that way. We already know that YouTube channel is a gem for so many people. Like, we say this all the time, like the people in the Chief Procurement Officer's office look at the videos and they learn themselves. So, we over here doing stuff right if we got the whole procurement team looking at our stuff. So it's definitely valuable, and please take some time to go over to the YouTube channel and check that out. Again, thank you all so much for being here. We have I try to do videos 2 to 3 times a month, so stay connected to us in email. Sign up for the email list if you're not already on there, and you'll see all of the different things that we have coming down the pipe. And then for the women business owners, I'm actually working on a half-day summit, which is Women, Mental Health, and Business. So it's going to be a half a day of virtual training on helping women from a mental health standpoint as you're running your business, because we know that that's a big deal for women. So be looking out for that as well, probably next month, if not next month, August. All right, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much, Deputy Director Jeanetta Cardine, for your brilliance and your expertise. All right.
Thank you for having me. Thank you guys. Take care.
Bye all.